What's up everyone? Another batch from Stack Lessons, 20 questions on security audit services, global accelerator routing, and resilience architecture. Format is the same: question, countdown, reveal, explanation. 10 seconds is the timer. Strap in. Alright, question 1. Choose for this case, not every case. Conteso Gaming is launching a real-time multiplayer game that uses UDP for low-latency communication between players and game servers hosted in the AWS US East 1 region. Players are distributed globally across South America, Europe, and Asia-Pacific. The team needs to minimize network latency for all players by routing their connections through the AWS Global Private Network backbone, rather than traversing the public internet. Which AWS service should they use? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option B. The UDP requirement is the disqualifier here. AWS Global Accelerator routes traffic through the AWS Global Private Network backbone, using anycast IP addresses, directing users to the nearest AWS edge location, and forwarding traffic internally across AWS infrastructure to the origin region. It supports both TCP and UDP protocols, making it appropriate for real-time gaming applications that rely on UDP for low-latency player communication. Amazon CloudFront is a content delivery network designed exclusively for HTTP and HTTPS workloads, such as web content, video streaming, and REST APIs. It does not support UDP traffic, and is not suited for real-time UDP-based multiplayer game sessions. Amazon Route 53 with latency-based routing directs DNS queries to the AWS region, with the lowest measured round-trip latency, but player traffic still travels across the public internet from the player to the regional endpoint. It does not route connections through the AWS private network backbone. Amazon API Gateway is designed for RESTful APIs and WebSocket APIs over HTTP and HTTPS, and does not support UDP traffic under any configuration. Okay, question 2. Read the ask, not just the topic. Conteso Hospital is evaluating two architectural approaches for a critical patient monitoring system that processes real-time vital signs data. The Architecture Review Board distinguishes between a high-availability design and a fault-tolerant design. Which statement correctly describes the fundamental difference between these two architectural goals? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option C. Find the phrase zero interruption and follow it. High availability and fault tolerance are related but distinct architectural goals with different cost and complexity trade-offs. High availability means a system is designed to recover quickly from failures with minimal downtime. It may briefly stop serving requests during a failover event as traffic is redirected, or a standby component is promoted, but it resumes operation within seconds or minutes. AWS services like RDS Multi-as or EC2 Auto-Scaling achieve high availability through rapid automated recovery, but there is an acknowledged brief transition period during failover. Fault tolerance means the system continues operating continuously without any service interruption even when components fail. There is zero downtime because redundant components absorb the failure transparently and simultaneously. Fault-tolerant architectures typically use active-active configurations, where all redundant components handle load concurrently, requiring significantly more capacity and cost than high-availability designs. Neither concept is strictly tied to a specific number of AWS regions or availability zones. Both can be achieved at different geographic scopes, depending on the redundancy design chosen. The two terms are not equivalent. Fault tolerance is a more stringent requirement with higher infrastructure overhead than high availability. Let's slow down here. Fault tolerance versus high availability is one of the trickiest terminology pairs on this exam. Imagine you're on call at 2 a.m. and a hospital's heart rate monitor feed goes dark. That's the stakes this question is setting up. The phrase fundamental difference tells you to look past surface details. It rules out the there equivalent answer immediately. The real trap is option D, which flips the definitions. It gives zero downtime to high availability, when that belongs to fault tolerance. Fault tolerance means active-active. One server fails, the other keeps serving. Zero blip. High availability means the system recovers fast, maybe 30 seconds, but there is a brief pause. The question rewards knowing which term means truly continuous. Okay, question 3. Check the condition before the service. Conteso Financial Services hosts a critical banking web application on AWS. The security team is concerned about large-scale volumetric DDoS attacks that could render the application unavailable. They require a 24/7 dedicated DDoS response team available to assist during active attacks, plus financial protection against AWS scaling charges caused by DDoS-generated traffic. Which AWS service meets all of these requirements? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option B. 3 requirements. One service that checks all 3. AWS Shield Advanced provides comprehensive managed DDoS protection that includes access to a 24/7 dedicated Shield response team for expert assistance during active attacks, enhanced detection for sophisticated large-scale volumetric events, and cost protection that credits AWS scaling charges directly incurred as a result of a DDoS event. These 3 capabilities collectively satisfy all stated requirements. AWS WAF protects against application layer exploits such as SQL injection and cross-site scripting at layer 7 of the OSI model. It does not mitigate volumetric DDoS attacks and includes no response team or cost protection. AWS Shield Standard is automatically enabled for all AWS customers at no additional cost, and defends against common Layer 3 and Layer 4 network attacks, but it does not include a dedicated DDoS response team or financial protection against scaling charges triggered by attack traffic. Amazon Guard Duty is a continuous threat detection service that analyzes CloudTrail events, VPC flow logs, and DNS query logs to surface malicious behavior inside an AWS environment. It provides no active DDoS protection. Here we go. Let's open question 4. Relic Cloud stores millions of user-generated media files in Amazon S3. Access patterns are entirely unpredictable. Some files are accessed frequently right after upload, then never again, while others remain actively read for months. The team wants to minimize storage costs automatically without writing custom lifecycle policies and without incurring retrieval fees on frequently accessed objects. Which S3 storage class should they use? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option B. The word automatically is doing all the work. S3 intelligent tiering automatically monitors access patterns for each individual object, and moves objects between tiers, frequent access, infrequent access, archive instant access, and archive access, with no retrieval fees and no minimum storage duration penalty for tier transitions. It is the only storage class specifically designed for unpredictable access patterns where custom lifecycle management is undesirable. S3 standard infrequent access charges a per GB retrieval fee and enforces a 30-day minimum storage duration. Objects that are accessed frequently after upload would generate substantial retrieval charges, making it cost-ineffective when access patterns are unpredictable. S3 Glacier Instant Retrieval is optimized for long-lived archive data accessed approximately once per quarter. Storing recently uploaded or actively accessed files in Glacier Instant Retrieval would incur high retrieval fees and is inconsistent with the variable access requirement. S3 One Zone Infrequent Access stores data in a single availability zone, reducing durability compared to multi as storage classes. It also charges retrieval fees and enforces a 30-day minimum duration, making it unsuitable for this scenario. Next up, question 5. Underline the key phrase mentally. A payments company architect is designing a transaction processing system. The business requirement states, the system must continue processing transactions with zero interruption, not even a brief failover pause, during any single infrastructure component failure. Which system design characteristic does this requirement specifically demand? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option B. Not even a brief pause means fault tolerance, not HA. Fault tolerance describes a system design philosophy where redundancy is built at every critical component level, ensuring that individual failures cause no interruption to service availability or data integrity. A fault-tolerant system continues operating without any pause, even when components fail, exactly what the payments company requires. High availability is designed to minimize downtime through rapid recovery mechanisms, such as automatic failover and health checks, but it permits brief interruptions during the recovery process and does not guarantee zero downtime. Elasticity refers to automatic bidirectional scaling based on demand and addresses capacity management, not system behavior during component failures. Scalability is the general ability to handle growing workloads and does not address the continuity requirement during hardware or software failures. Global routing and resilience definitions set the early tone. Global Accelerator owns UDP and private backbone traffic. Shield Advanced bundles the response team with cost protection. Fault tolerance demands zero interruption, not just fast recovery. Next up, question 6. The scenario tells you the trade-off. Prosware's engineering team is selecting an AWS support plan for a new production workload. Their requirements include 24/7 access to cloud support engineers via phone and chat, a guaranteed engagement time of less than 30 minutes when production systems are down, access to the full set of AWS Trusted Advisor checks, and AI-powered troubleshooting assistance. The team does not require a dedicated technical account manager. Which support plan meets all requirements at the lowest cost? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option D. They need a human on the phone in under 30 minutes. Business Support Plus is the minimum plan that satisfies every stated requirement. It provides 24/7 phone, web, and chat access to cloud support engineers, a guaranteed human engagement time of less than 30 minutes for production-critical system down cases, access to more than 500 AWS Trusted Advisor checks covering cost optimization, security, fault tolerance, and performance, and real-time AI-powered contextual troubleshooting assistance. Business Support Plus does not include a dedicated technical account manager, which aligns with the team's explicit budget constraint. Basic Support provides access to documentation, the AWS Repost Community Forum, and billing inquiries only. It does not offer access to cloud support engineers or any technical response time (SLA), making it insufficient for production workloads. Enterprise Support includes all Business Support Plus capabilities and adds a designated technical account manager, proactive guidance, and up to 15-minute response times for the most critical cases. Since the team explicitly ruled out a technical account manager and enterprise support carries a substantially higher monthly cost, it exceeds what is required. AWS Unified Operations provides a fully managed operational model with dedicated technical account managers, domain specialist engineers, and personalized runbooks for organizations that want AWS to co-manage operations end-to-end, a level of service and cost far beyond the team's baseline support requirements. Now, question 7. Reason from the scenario. Northwind Manufacturing needs to migrate 80 terabytes of archival data from its on-premises data center to Amazon S3. The company has a 100 megabits per second internet connection shared with production workloads, and the migration must complete within 2 weeks without degrading production traffic. Which service should the company use? Select 1. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option B. Run the bandwidth math first, then pick your tool. Transferring 80 terabytes over a 100 megabits per second connection would take approximately 74 days even at full utilization, far exceeding the 2-week deadline. AWS Snowball Edge is a physical device shipped to the customer's data center, loaded with data on premises, and then shipped back to AWS for direct ingestion into Amazon S3. This offline approach is purpose-built for exactly this scenario: large datasets, constrained or shared network connections, and time-sensitive migration deadlines. Amazon S3 transfer acceleration optimizes internet-based S3 uploads by routing traffic through AWS Edge locations, but it does not overcome the fundamental bandwidth constraint of a 100 megabits per second shared link. AWS Data Sync provides efficient network-based data transfer with scheduling and throttling controls, but even with throttling, the timeline cannot be met on a 100 megabits per second link while protecting production traffic. AWS Direct Connect provides a dedicated private network connection, but provisioning typically takes several weeks and would be unnecessary infrastructure investment for a one-time data migration event. Now, Question 8. A startup is building a document processing service on AWS. The team provisions 3 EC2 instances running continuously 24 hours a day to handle document conversion jobs. Jobs are triggered only when users upload a document, take approximately 30 seconds to complete, and arrive at an average rate of 20 per hour with occasional peaks of 200 per hour. A cloud architect recommends redesigning this component to align with the performance efficiency pillar of the AWS well-architected framework. Which design change best applies this pillar? Select 1. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option A. Idle servers for spiky workloads is the inefficiency to fix. The performance efficiency pillar of the AWS well-architected framework emphasizes using compute resources efficiently by matching resource type to workload characteristics and adopting serverless architectures where appropriate. Short duration, event-driven jobs like 30-second document conversions are ideal for AWS Lambda, which executes code only when invoked, automatically scales from 0 to thousands of concurrent invocations, and eliminates the waste of continuously running servers for intermittent workloads. Replacing always-on EC2 instances with Lambda directly applies the performance efficiency principle of eliminating idle resource consumption. Vertical scaling increases the capacity of existing instances, but does not address the fundamental inefficiency of running servers continuously for a workload that sits idle most of the time. EC2 auto-scaling adds elasticity, but maintains at least a minimum number of always-running instances, which is less efficient than truly on-demand Lambda execution. Reserved instances reduce cost but lock in continuous EC2 capacity, which maximizes idle resource waste rather than eliminating it. Let us keep moving. Question 9. Likely distractors ahead. Contessa Insurance is building an automated claims processing pipeline on AWS. When a customer submits a claim, the system must extract structured data, including names, dates, and dollar amounts, from scanned paper claim forms uploaded as image files. The system must also analyze extracted text to determine the sentiment of written customer comments on the form. Both tasks must use pre-built AWS AI services with no machine learning expertise required from the development team. Which 2 AWS services should be used to implement this pipeline? Select 2. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answers are option B and option C. Recognition sees images. Textract reads what is in them. Amazon Textract is purpose-built for extracting text and structured data from scanned documents and images. It identifies and extracts form fields as key value pairs, including names, dates, and dollar amounts from handwritten or printed claim forms, and returns structured output without requiring custom model training or ML expertise. Amazon Comprehend is a natural language processing service with pre-built models that detect the sentiment of text, positive, negative, neutral, or mixed, using a simple API call, requiring no machine learning experience. Amazon Recognition is optimized for detecting objects, faces, labels, and unsafe content in images, not for extracting structured form data or key value pairs from documents. Amazon Transcribe is a speech-to-text service that converts audio into text and does not process written text or evaluate sentiment. Amazon SageMaker is a full machine learning platform for building, training, and deploying custom models, which requires significant ML expertise and is unnecessary when pre-built services like Textract and Comprehend satisfy the requirements. Let us keep moving. Question 10. Compare scope and condition. Northwind Core's security team has two separate investigation needs: identifying which IAM user deleted a production S3 bucket last Friday, and identifying all S3 buckets in the account currently configured to allow public access in violation of company policy. Which two AWS services address these requirements? Select 2. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answers are option A and option C. CloudTrail answers who. Config answers what changed. AWS CloudTrail records all API calls made to AWS services, capturing the identity of the caller, the timestamp, source IP address, and request parameters. Querying CloudTrail event history for the delete bucket API call reveals exactly which IAM user or role deleted the production bucket. AWS Config continuously records the configuration state of AWS resources and evaluates them against compliance rules. Config can identify all S3 buckets with public access enabled using managed rules such as S3 bucket public read prohibited, and provides a timeline view of when each bucket's configuration changed. Amazon CloudWatch monitors metrics and log streams for operational health, but does not record API-level identity information about who performed specific actions on resources. GuardDuty is a threat detection service that identifies suspicious behavior patterns using machine learning, but does not evaluate resource configurations against compliance rules. Security Hub aggregates security findings from multiple services but does not independently audit API calls or evaluate resource configuration states. Bandwidth Math, Support SLAs, and Dual Service AI pipelines all showed up. Business Support Plus covers the sub-30-minute response. Snowball wins when the network cannot make the deadline. Textract extracts structure while Comprehend handles sentiment. Let us keep moving. Let's handle question 11. Quick check. A security auditor at Prosware Incorporated is investigating a potential security incident. The auditor must determine the exact identity of the AWS principal that deleted a critical production Amazon RDS database instance last Tuesday at 14:47 UTC, along with the source IP address of the request. Which AWS service should the auditor query to retrieve this information? Select 1. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option A. CloudTrail is your forensic log, full stop. AWS CloudTrail records a complete, immutable log of every API call made in an AWS account, capturing the identity of the requester, the action performed, the specific resource affected, the timestamp of the request, and the source IP address. The deleted byinstance API call that removed the production RDS instance would be recorded in CloudTrail event history with precisely the information the auditor needs to attribute the action. Amazon CloudWatch Metrics collects numerical performance and operational data, CPU utilization, request counts, error rates, and similar measurements. CloudWatch does not log API caller identity, action history, or source IP addresses and is not the correct tool for forensic attribution. AWS Config records the configuration state of AWS resources over time and can show that the RDS instance's configuration changed and that it no longer exists. However, Config captures what changed in resource configuration, not who initiated the API call that caused the change. Config does not record the identity of the API caller. Amazon Guard Duty is a continuous threat detection service that analyzes CloudTrail logs, VPC flow logs, and DNS query logs to identify anomalous behavior and known attack patterns. Guard Duty might generate a finding if the deletion appeared suspicious, but it surfaces behavioral alerts rather than providing the raw API audit trail needed to directly identify the requester's credentials and source IP. Ready. Question 12. Compare the distractors carefully. A cloud financial manager at Litware Incorporated needs to accomplish 3 distinct tasks: estimate the monthly cost of a new 3-tier web application before any AWS resources are deployed, receive an automated email alert when the current month's EC2 spend exceeds $10,000, and analyze 12 months of historical spending patterns broken down by team cost allocation tag. Which 3 AWS tools should they use for these tasks respectively? Select 3. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answers are option A, option B, and option C. Match each task to the one tool built for it. AWS Pricing Calculator is the correct pre-deployment cost estimation tool. It allows teams to configure AWS services, input expected usage volumes and patterns, and receive projected monthly cost estimates before any resources are provisioned. It supports modeling complex multi-service architectures such as 3-tier web applications. AWS Budgets is the purpose-built tool for threshold-based cost alerting. Teams define a budget amount tied to a specific service, linked account, or tag, and Budgets automatically sends notifications via email or SMS when actual or forecasted spend crosses the defined threshold. It updates multiple times daily and requires no custom metric configuration. AWS Cost Explorer provides interactive visualization and filtering of historical AWS spending. It allows filtering by service, region, tag, linked account, and custom date ranges, making it the right tool for analyzing 12 months of spending broken down by cost allocation tags assigned to different teams. AWS Cost and Usage Report delivers detailed billing data to an S3 bucket as CSV or Parquet files for custom analysis of existing charges. It does not estimate costs before deployment. AWS Trusted Advisor provides cost optimization recommendations for existing provisioned resources, such as idle EC2 instances or underutilized reserved instances, but cannot project costs for new architectures. Amazon CloudWatch monitors operational metrics and application logs, while a billing alert can be created via a CloudWatch alarm on the estimated charges metric. AWS Budgets is the dedicated and more capable purpose-built service for this scenario. This question tests whether you know which cost tool handles which job. Let's map it out. Imagine you're a cloud finance manager at Litware. You have 3 jobs today. First, you need to price out a new web app before anything is deployed. That's Pricing Calculator. Model costs before you provision anything. Second, you need an alert when EC2 hits $10,000 this month. That's AWS Budgets, not CloudWatch. Budgets is the purpose-built tool for spending thresholds. Third, you need to slice 12 months of spending by team tag. That's Cost Explorer. Now the traps. Cost and Usage Report sends raw billing files to S3. It can't estimate future costs. Trusted Advisor flags waste in existing resources. It can't project new builds. That's the pattern. One job, one tool. Ready? Question 13. Check whether it asks what or why. Woodgrove Bank is migrating a self-managed Oracle database from an on-premises server to AWS. The operations team wants to completely eliminate the undifferentiated overhead of database patching, backup scheduling, and hardware maintenance. The bank's application code uses Oracle-specific SQL features and stored procedures that must remain unchanged. The team has decided they do not need to change the database engine. Which migration strategy does this approach represent? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option D. The key phrase, does not need to change the engine. Re-platform, also described as lift and reshape, involves moving an application to AWS with targeted optimizations that reduce operational overhead without changing the core application architecture or requiring code rewrites. Migrating a self-managed Oracle database to Amazon RDS for Oracle eliminates database patching, hardware management, and manual backup operations while keeping the Oracle engine intact. The application continues running without modification. This optimization is the defining characteristic of re-platform. The platform changes from self-managed to managed, but the application code and database engine stay the same. Rehost, lift and shift, would move the Oracle database as is to an EC2 instance, preserving the same self-managed operational burden with no cloud-native benefit. Refactor involves redesigning the application to use cloud-native patterns such as microservices, serverless, or a different database engine, which would require significant application code changes and is the opposite of what the bank specified. Repurchase replaces the existing application by purchasing a SaaS product from a third-party vendor, which would require switching away from Oracle entirely. Let us switch gears. Question 14. The wrong answers are close. Conteso Bank's Security Operations Center has 3 distinct requirements. Identify which IAM user deleted an Amazon S3 bucket last Tuesday. Receive an automated alert when CPU utilization on any EC2 instance exceeds 90%, and determine when an EC2 security group rule was last changed and whether the current configuration complies with the corporate firewall policy. Which combination of AWS services satisfies all 3 requirements? Select 3. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answers are option A, option B, and option C. Guard duty and inspector have exact jobs. Know the boundaries. AWS CloudTrail records every AWS API call, capturing the identity of the caller, the timestamp, the source IP address, and the affected resources. Identifying which IAM user deleted an S3 bucket requires querying CloudTrail management event history. Amazon CloudWatch collects operational metrics including EC2 CPU utilization and supports alarms that automatically notify teams or trigger automated responses when configurable thresholds are exceeded. AWS Config continuously records the configuration state of AWS resources over time, tracks when each configuration change occurred, and evaluates resource configurations against compliance rules, making it the correct service for tracking security group changes and assessing compliance with firewall policies. Amazon Guard Duty uses machine learning to detect threats and suspicious behavior, but does not track resource configuration history. AWS Trusted Advisor provides cost, performance, and security best practice recommendations at a point in time rather than continuous configuration change tracking. Amazon Inspector scans EC2 instances and container images for software vulnerabilities and unintended network exposure, rather than configuration change compliance. Let us switch gears. Question 15. Start with what the user needs. Northwind Corp is selecting AWS in-memory data services for 2 business use cases. The first use case accelerates reads against an Amazon RDS database by caching frequently queried results in memory, where data can be repopulated from the database if lost. The second use case stores gaming leaderboard rankings with sub-millisecond read access, and the rankings must survive node failures without any data loss. Which option correctly matches each use case to the appropriate service? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option A. The word survive node failures are the durability signal. Amazon ElastiCache is a managed in-memory caching service optimized for scenarios where speed is the primary goal, and some data loss is acceptable because the underlying source of truth, in this case the RDS database, can repopulate the cache after a node failure. ElastiCache is purpose-built for reducing database read latency by serving frequently accessed results from memory, which precisely matches the first use case. Amazon MemoryDB for Redis is a durable, in-memory database service that stores data persistently across multiple availability zones and guarantees zero data loss even during node failures. It combines Redis-compatible microsecond read latency with millisecond write durability, making it the correct choice for leaderboard data that must survive infrastructure failures with no data loss. MemoryDB is classified as a primary database, not a cache. Using MemoryDB as a query cache is technically possible but unnecessarily expensive. Its multi-as durability and write-ahead logging add cost and overhead well beyond what a caching scenario requires. Using ElastiCache for the leaderboard is incorrect because ElastiCache does not guarantee data durability. Cached data can be permanently lost when a node fails, making it unsuitable for leaderboard rankings that must persist. DynamoDB Accelerator is an in-memory caching layer specifically for DynamoDB and cannot accelerate queries against Amazon RDS. Let's break down the two in-memory services the exam loves to mix up: ElastiCache and MemoryDB. Imagine you run a leaderboard for a mobile game with 50,000 daily players. If a server dies, rankings can't vanish. Now picture a product catalog cached on top of a relational database. If the cache resets, you just reload it. These two jobs need different tools. ElastiCache is a pure cache, blazing fast, but data can disappear when a node fails. That's fine when your database is the source of truth. MemoryDB is a Redis-compatible in-memory database. It writes to a transaction log first, so data survives failures across multiple zones. For the leaderboard, only MemoryDB guarantees no data loss. The exam rewards knowing which one is durable and which one isn't. Audit attribution, migration vocabulary, and in-memory durability dominated the midsection. CloudTrail owns forensic attribution. Replatform keeps the engine, switches to managed. MemoryDB guarantees no data loss where ElastiCache does not. Let us switch gears. Let's go to question 16. Tailspin Toys deployed a 3-tier web application in a VPC. Front-end web servers are in public subnets, and back-end database instances are in private subnets. The team wants the database servers to be able to initiate outbound connections to the internet, to download security patches, while ensuring no unsolicited inbound connections from the internet can reach the private subnet. Which VPC component enables this outbound-only internet access for private subnet instances? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option B. NAT gateway is the one-way door for private subnets. A NAT, network address translation, gateway allows instances in private subnets to initiate outbound connections to the internet, while blocking the internet from initiating inbound connections to those instances. The NAT gateway is deployed in a public subnet and translates outbound private IP addresses to its own public elastic IP address, then forwards responses back to the originating private instance. An Internet gateway enables bidirectional Internet connectivity for instances in public subnets that have public or elastic IP addresses, but it does not protect private subnets from unsolicited inbound traffic. VPC endpoints provide private connectivity to AWS services such as S3 and DynamoDB without traversing the Internet, but they do not enable general Internet access. Transit Gateway connects multiple VPCs and on-premises networks and does not provide Internet access for private subnets. Keep your focus here. Question 17. The scenario tells you the trade-off. Fabricom Healthcare is configuring network security for a 3-tier web application running in an Amazon VPC. The security team has two specific requirements: restrict which application servers can initiate connections to the database layer, and block a list of known malicious IP address ranges at the subnet perimeter before any traffic reaches instances. Which combination correctly matches the right AWS tool to each requirement? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option A. Instance-level precision always needs a security group. Security groups are stateful firewalls attached to instances or elastic network interfaces. Because they operate at the instance level and support rules that reference other security groups as sources, they are the correct tool for restricting which specific application servers are permitted to connect to the database tier. Network access control lists are stateless firewalls applied at the subnet boundary. Because they process all traffic entering or leaving a subnet before it reaches any instance, they are the correct tool for blocking entire IP address ranges at the perimeter. Security groups alone cannot enforce subnet-level controls that affect all resources regardless of their individual rules. Network ACLs cannot restrict traffic between specific instances within the same subnet, because they only operate on traffic crossing the subnet boundary. Using NACLs alone to control database access would require managing subnet-level rules that cannot target individual instances, making security groups the more precise and operationally correct choice for that requirement. Security groups versus network ACLs trips up a lot of people. Let's build a simple decision tree. Think of your VPC like a secure office building. At the front door, a guard checks a block list of known troublemakers. Nobody from those addresses gets past the lobby. That's the network ACL. It sits at the subnet edge and stops bad IP ranges cold. Inside, individual rooms have keycard locks. Only badge 42, your app server, can open the database room door. That's the security group. It attaches to an instance and says, only traffic from this group gets in. Here's the trap. NACLs can't target individual instances. They only see traffic crossing the subnet line. And security groups don't work at the subnet level. They can't block IP ranges. Each tool has its own lane. Use both together when you need perimeter blocking and precise instance control. All right. Question 18. Identify the business need first. Fabricom Financial runs a real-time stock trading platform with back-end servers in the US East, North Virginia, and EU West, Ireland, AWS regions. Traders connect to the platform using TCP from offices in 40 countries. Financial regulators require that the platform expose fixed IP addresses that corporate firewalls can whitelist. The team also needs user traffic to travel over the AWS Global Network backbone, rather than the public internet, to minimize latency and connection instability. Which AWS service fulfills both requirements? Select one. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answer is option D. Static IPs plus AWS backbone, that is the two-word TEL. AWS Global Accelerator provides two static anycast IP addresses that serve as fixed, globally consistent entry points for the application, satisfying the regulatory requirement to whitelist specific IPs in corporate firewalls. When a trader connects to these IPs from anywhere in the world, traffic enters the AWS Global Network, at the nearest AWS edge location, and is then routed over AWS's private backbone to the nearest healthy regional endpoint, whether US East or EU West, minimizing latency and avoiding the variability and packet loss of the public internet. Amazon CloudFront is an HTTP and HTTPS content delivery network designed for caching web content and media at edge locations. It does not support general TCP protocol connections used by trading platforms, does not provide static IP addresses, and is optimized for cacheable content rather than stateful low-latency financial connections. Amazon Route 53 with latency-based routing uses DNS to direct users to the nearest regional endpoint, but DNS responses are subject to client-side caching and TTL delays, meaning traffic may continue routing to a degraded region until DNS propagates, and Route 53 does not provide static IP addresses or route traffic over the AWS backbone. Separate network load balancers in each region provide high-performance regional load balancing, but do not offer global traffic routing, static anycast IPs, or the AWS backbone optimization needed to automatically connect users across 40 countries to the nearest healthy region. All right, question 19. Pick the complete answer. Conteso Corp is designing a critical order processing application on AWS. The current architecture uses a single EC2 instance for the application and a single as RDS database. The engineering team wants to redesign the architecture to align with the reliability pillar of the AWS well-architected framework. Which two changes should they implement? Select 2. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answers are option A and option C. Multi-as removes both single points of failure here. The reliability pillar of the well-architected framework focuses on the ability of a workload to recover from infrastructure or service disruptions and mitigate disruptions such as misconfigurations or transient failures. Deploying EC2 instances across multiple availability zones behind an elastic load balancer eliminates a single point of failure at the compute tier. If one as becomes unavailable, the load balancer continues routing traffic to healthy instances in other ASes. Configuring RDS multi-as creates a synchronous standby replica in a different AS and automatically fails over within 60 to 120 seconds if the primary database becomes unavailable. CloudWatch billing alerts relate to the cost optimization pillar, not reliability. Spot instances are an availability risk because AWS can terminate them with 2 minutes notice, which works against reliability goals. S3 versioning helps with data durability but does not address the availability and failover weaknesses in this architecture. Okay. Question 20. This is a two-step filter. A cloud security team is evaluating AWS threat detection and vulnerability management tools. Which TU statements correctly describe these services and their distinct purposes? Select 2. Review the answer choices on screen. The correct answers are option A and option B. Each wrong option belongs to a completely different service. Amazon Guard Duty is a continuous threat detection service that analyzes CloudTrail management events, VPC flow logs, and DNS logs to surface malicious activity such as compromised EC2 instances, unusual API calls, and connections to threat intelligence matched IP addresses, all without requiring agents or changes to existing infrastructure. Amazon Inspector performs automated vulnerability assessments against EC2 instances and container images, identifying known CVEs, unpatched software packages, and unintended network exposure within the workload configuration. The capability of scanning S3 for sensitive data such as PII and financial records belongs to Amazon Macy, not Guard Duty. Real-time monitoring of AWS API calls for unauthorized IAM access is done by AWS CloudTrail combined with CloudWatch alarms or Event Bridge rules, not Amazon Inspector. Dedicated hardware security modules for cryptographic keys are provided by AWS Cloud HSM, which has no relationship to guard duty. Let's slow down here. 5 options, and 3 of them deliberately swap service jobs. Imagine your AWS account is a building. Guard duty is the security camera. It reads your CloudTrail and network flow logs, looking for threats, like 47 login attempts from a known botnet. Inspector is the building inspector. It crawls your servers and container images, looking for known software flaws and open network ports. Now the traps. Option C's scan for personal data in S3 belongs to Macy, not guard duty. Option D's API call monitoring for unauthorized access is CloudTrail's job, not Inspector's. Option E is about dedicated hardware for encryption keys. That's Cloud HSM's job. The exam shuffles these service jobs. That's the trap. 3 takeaways from this session. First, Global Accelerator routes UDP and TCP over the AWS private backbone. CloudFront handles only HTTP and HTTPS. Second, CloudTrail identifies the API caller and timestamp. AWS Config tracks resource configuration state over time. Third, MemoryDB guarantees zero data loss on node failure. ElastiCache tolerates cache loss and repopulates from the source database. CloudTrail owns who. Every attribution question points there. Config owns what changed. Guard duty owns what is threatening you right now. Lock that triangle in, and the entire audit category becomes automatic. One more thing before you go. If these sets are useful, hit subscribe. It keeps them free and reaches more people like you. Drop your score below and flag any question worth a deeper look. Want a different exam covered next? Just name it, and if the speed or style could improve, tell me. That shapes the next batch.